weekend getaway to reconnect. That's all it was supposed to be. A chance for Derek and I to focus on each other without the distractions of work and routine. Just 2 days to ignite a little romance in our marriage again. But this trip ignited something much darker. It started pleasantly enough. We rented a cozy cabin on a remote lake. The location was beautiful. Tall pines surrounding the serene waterfront. It felt good to be offline and fully present together. On the first day we went hiking, made fireside chili, and laughed over steaming mugs of cocoa. That evening, we cuddled under a thick blanket, gazing up at more stars than I'd ever seen. No matter what, we'll look back fondly on this trip, Derek whispered. I smiled and snuggled closer, feeling blissfully disconnected from the outside world. If only I had known how wrong he would be, how horribly, nightmarishly wrong. The first signs of trouble came the next morning when I woke up alone in our bed. The cabin was eerily silent. I wandered outside calling Derek's name, but only heard my voice echoing off the still lake. In the pit of my stomach, I knew something wasn't right. Derek would never have left me without a word. I was about to reach for my phone to call him when I heard a faint moaning coming from the shed out back. I cautiously pushed open the creaky door. Derek. No reply, just a gagging sound in the darkness. Fumbling for a light switch, I gasped as the overhead bulb revealed Derek tied to a chair, bloody and battered. A filthy rag had been shoved in his mouth. I rushed to remove it, but paused when I heard the unmistakable click of a hammer being pulled back. Spinning around, I came face to face with the stern barrel of a handgun. Not another sound, he growled. I opened my mouth to scream anyway, but the man lifted the gun menacingly to Derek's temple. Finger on the trigger, eyes wide with terror. Derek shook his head, pleadingly at me. I closed my mouth, raising my hands in fearful submission. The man, who looked to be in his 60s, motioned for me to sit next to Derek. As I did, I noticed his legs were crudely taped to the chair legs. The man regarded us coldly, then spoke. My name's Clint. I own the land around these parts, included in this cabin you're squatting in. He explained that he didn't take kindly to trespassers and liked to teach them a lesson, as he described in graphic detail exactly how he planned to torture us over the next few days. I felt vomit rising in my throat. Derek's face had gone sheet white. Only way you'll leave alive is if I decide you've repented enough, Clint concluded, casually resting the gun atop a shelf of rusted tools. So I suggest you apologize real nice and convince me you're sorry for trespassing. The next 2 days passed in a blur of pain and humiliation as we desperately did everything we could think of to repent for our innocent mistake. Nothing we said or did swayed Clint. He seemed to take great pleasure in seeing our anguish. Just when I thought we would both die in that musty shed, voices outside startled Clint. Police, come out with your hands up. He glared at us bitterly as he surrendered. You got lucky this time, sinners. We later learned our friends had reported us missing after we didn't return home on time. The cops traced our rental car and found Clint squatting illegally on the property. He'd kidnapped and tortured several other tourists, but always evaded capture. Until now, Derek and I barely discuss those 48 hours, even years later. The things we endured at the hands of that madman are buried deep in the recesses of our minds. We sold the cabin after Clint's arrest, unable to bear returning to the scene of such brutality. The places you expect to find peace sometimes harbor untold darkness, and there's no telling what evil minds lurk off the beaten path, awaiting their chance to turn your dreams into living nightmares. A week at a lake house. It was supposed to be a peaceful family getaway. Just me, my husband Jack, and our 2 kids enjoying quality time together. We'd swim, fish, play board games, and disconnect from the stress of daily life. But our idyllic retreat quickly took a terrifying turn. The first few days were everything we hoped for. The weather was perfect as the kids splashed around the private dock and took the little motorboat out for spins. In the evenings, we barbecued dinner, then roasted marshmallows under the stars. It felt good to be together away from the hustle and grind back home. No distractions, just laughter and simple joy. I remember thinking I should bottle up these memories to hold on to when times got tough again. But then the screams started. It was during a late-night thunderstorm that we first heard the faint cries coming from the woods behind the house. At first, we assumed it was an animal in distress, but the wailing persisted for hours, almost sounding like a person yelling out in pain. Jack went out on the deck to investigation, but the downpour drowned out the sounds. The next morning, the kids asked about the spooky noises they heard in the night. We waved it off as a bobcat or coyote, but things only got more unsettling. The next evening, while having dinner on the back patio, we heard definite angry shouting coming from deep in the forest. Jack hurried down to the tree line, demanding whoever was trespassing to show themselves. Only silence followed. That night, none of us could sleep, listening anxiously for sounds over the chirp of crickets. The kids huddled close to me in bed, frightened by the phantom cries in the night. We decided come morning, we'd pack up and leave this place. But when we rose the next day, our SUV was missing from the dirt driveway. No tire tracks or signs of broken glass. It had just vanished. With no cell service this deep in the woods, we were stranded. As Jack hiked down the road seeking help, the cries rang out again from the shadows of the trees. Only they were no longer indistinct. This time, the shrill, pleading voice was distinctly yelling, "Help me! Help me!" over and over. I gathered the terrified kids inside and locked all the doors and windows. Peering outside, I could see movement in the tree line, a shape lumbering between the trunks and underbrush. Something was out there, but it didn't seem human. Jack returned hours later, still having found no main road or neighbors, but he brought chilling news from a store owner in a rural town miles away. Apparently, hikers had been disappearing in these woods for decades. Some claimed Bigfoot himself was behind the vanishings. Surely just an unsettling myth. With no way out, we had no choice but to hunker down and wait another night, keeping vigilant watch for whatever sinister presence lurked beyond the tree line. As soon as daylight broke, we'd make another attempt to find help. We just prayed we would all live to see the sunrise. The next day's dawn never came for my husband, though. At some point in the grim night, Jack's agonized screams jolted us awake. By the time I rushed outside to the back deck, he was gone. Only his slippers and a trail of blood leading into the dense forest remained. The local authorities never found a single trace of Jack during their investigation of the area. The kids and I left that lake house traumatized, mourning the man we loved. We still don't know for sure what happened to him out there in those woods, but it seems some dark entity roams that isolated forest, lying in wait for those unfortunate enough to stumble unknowingly into its domain. They say time soothes all wounds, but there are some scars too deep to ever fully heal. The shadowy shapes that haunt your nightmares, stealing life and hope. The dangers lurking right at the edges of paradise, hungry and untamed. Getting away from it all, isn't that what vacations are supposed to be about? A chance to relax and leave your worries behind for a while. But my last vacation turned relaxing into terrifying really quick. My best friend Sam and I had planned a road trip to a rented cabin way up in the mountains. Just the two of us hanging out alone in nature, far from civilization. We stocked up on beer, junk food, horror movies, all the essentials for a guy's weekend. The drive there was cool. The landscape kept getting prettier the farther from the city we went. Remote forests, rivers, hardly any houses or people. I remember thinking how peaceful it was. Boy, was I wrong. Things started getting creepy right when we pulled up to the cabin. It looked way more run down and isolated than in the photos online. The windows were so dusty you couldn't see inside. Definitely no other renters around. Only woods in every direction. Sam shrugged it off, but I felt kinda uneasy, especially when we walked in and saw the mess left from whoever stayed there last. Furniture tipped over. Stains and dirt everywhere. Looked like the scene of a struggle, honestly. But we got some lights on and beers cracked to try shaking off the weird vibe. Sam cranked up some music as we started cleaning the place up a bit. After a while, I relaxed and we got into playing drinking games. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. That night, though, things got crazy. We were woken up by what sounded like a woman screaming outside. We tried yelling out the windows, but didn't see anything except dark woods. Neither of us got much sleep after that, just listening for more screams that never came. The next day, while Sam was busy fishing, I decided to walk to where I thought the screams came from. I know, stupid idea in a horror movie situation, but I just had to check it out, see if I could find clues to what it was. Wandering through the trees, I came to a tiny clearing with an old shed, the door half open. That's when the screaming started again, this time in daylight, coming from inside the shed. Every instinct told me to run, but I approached slowly, calling out. That's when a woman came bursting out of the shed, bloody and hysterical. She was crying about someone named Tom who had trapped her there. I helped her back to the cabin so we could call the police. But when we arrived, the place was trashed. No sign of Sam anywhere. I ran back outside, shouting his name. That's when I heard him scream from the direction of the shed. Sprinting through the woods, I found the shed again. Only now the door was padlocked from the outside. I could hear Sam inside yelling for help. Suddenly, a huge guy I'd never seen before came up behind me with an axe. I barely dodged his first swing, running back towards the cabin. I could hear the psycho chasing me as I dialed 911, but the operator said no signal could reach way out here. I was trapped in this wilderness with a violent murderer holding my friend captive. Just then, the woman appeared again, blocking my path. She gave me this evil grin, and suddenly I realized she had lured me to the shed on purpose to trap me too. There was no escaping these psychos. All I can really remember after that is pain. Intense, brutal, never-ending pain. I learned that there are some serious monsters hiding themselves away, deep in the untamed places. And they don't take kindly to uninvited guests stumbling upon the gruesome secrets inside their remote cabin in the woods. Somehow I escaped from that nightmare, but I'll never be the same. Haven't been on a vacation since. My scars serve as a permanent reminder that evil can be lurking right outside your door, closer than you ever imagine, just waiting for the right moment to emerge, howling from the shadows.